Hey, we're here from the Boxing VIP Media Center. I'm here with my good pal from the UK, Dennis Hobson, and his buddy, John Trethewy.
Close enough.
Close enough. So you guys got a big fight, UK versus the United States. It's happening next week in the UK. Talk about this unique situation and what you guys are trying to do.
Let me go back to where this all began, and my dear friend John Ryder up there, who's with our Dawn now. We came up with this concept as we were going out for dinner one evening, and I forget where we were having dinner, but me and John's known each other for a long time, and we met through boxing. And because of his name, I think it must have led a spark in my mind where we said Ryder, but spelt different, the Ryder Cup in golf. And how can we create a tournament type sort of event between the UK and the USA, because obviously there's a lot of history between the USA and the UK. And eventually we put this together after COVID and things like that, because I think we're pre-COVID where we come up with a concept. But my dear friend here, John Trethewey, he have I said that right, John? We've been working quite a long time and doing quite a few shows together now, and quite a few events together. And we managed to get this over the line in Texas, and we thought it'd be a great event, but it surpassed what we could have ever hoped. All the kids bought into being in a tournament, and as you can imagine, a kid's not just getting in the ring to fight for himself and his family; he's fighting for a team then. So it's a different mindset.
And they're fighting for their country.
And they're fighting for the country. So the kids, it's like using a soccer term, it's their FA Cup final. It's their cup final representing their country, especially coming over to the States. And obviously the reason why we're over here is for the next leg after what we're doing, which is the second leg back in the UK at Chelsea Football Club. But John will tell you a little bit more about that, the matchups that he's been heavily involved with, and he does a fantastic job. I've nicknamed him Chancellor because he's great at making the sums add up and the maths and the money situation and financial side, and we've got a great relationship, and this has got a lot of legs, this, Mario, and we want our man here, Mario, to help us put the next one on in the Las Vegas, and the people and the kids from back in the UK will be crawling to get on the show when we get it together.
Now, we had a little conversation before we get back to you, John, about the roughness of the UK and their gyms, the grunginess. They're coming from the gutters nowadays, I guess you could say in slang terms. These fighters are tough, right?
Yeah,
from the UK. Talk a little bit about these guys.
Yeah, of course. Look, we're from Britain, so we're going to say that, but they are tough fighters. We believe that we got some of the best fighters in the world. We've got some of the best talent coming through. I'm based down in London, and we deal with most of the gyms down in London, some of the bigger ones, some of the smaller ones. We also are very confident that we have the most passionate fans in the world. I know you guys over here, a lot of you actually agree with that. And as Dennis has mentioned, we're looking to bring those fans over. You know, we did do the Texas one. That was in October last year, and it was fantastic. The togetherness, the team spirit. Like Dennis said, it wasn't just fighting for yourself. The last fight, we were 3-2 down. And Harvey Horn, our guy back home, afterwards, he was like, the pressure I felt, it wasn't just like a normal fight. Because if I lost, Team UK lost. If I won, I salvaged the draw, which he did. We've invited them all back, as you say. We're out here at the moment talking to you about doing a show here, but we have next week first to come, which is 5-6 days away now. And it's at the iconic Chelsea Football Club, or soccer, as you would call it. But that's a big global brand, and it's the first ever professional show that they put on, or we're putting on there. The matching, as Dennis has meant, is fantastic. We've got 7 Americans coming over. Each match is something like 9-0 v 8-0. There's a 13-2 versus an 11-1. They're very well matched. It isn't a case of, let's match it so the English win, or when we came here, let's match it for the Americans. And we'd like to do the same again. We're here specifically to see you guys talking about UK, USA concept that Dennis and John created, because it clearly is working, and what better place to do it than Vegas. So.
Now, just for those that don't know how these fights are structured, these are 5-round bouts, so there's no draws, right, as far as the one-on-ones. Talk a little bit about the 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, you can still have a draw, right, even though it's in 5 rounds, but it's more likely not to be. That's why we've done it. They're quick format. It's not like the prize fighter, it's 3 rounds, but they're short format. So maybe you might get a knockout because if you're a couple of rounds behind early, you might have to change your game plan. The first round of fights that we had in Texas, every one of them was a great fight. There was actually a knockout either side as well. The Americans got a knockout, the UK team got a knockout. And I'm pretty sure it will be the same next week in Chelsea. Got one cruiserweight fight on there. He's 9-0 with 8 knockouts, the British guy, and the American is 8-0 with 7 knockouts. So it's one of them don't blink. I might have to take their money off them if it's over in the first minute or so, but that could happen.
Nice. Now, the golden nuggets of boxing are flurries, toe-to-toe action, and knockouts. Is it fair to say these fighters are going for it because they got a lot of pride on their back when they're getting into the ring, right? Everybody's trying to just go for it. Is that what you saw in Texas? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, exactly that. As I said, I mean, there's lots of different styles in boxing, okay? You've got your come forward, aggressive fighters who look for a knockout. Maybe I like the sweet science, the clever boxers, etc. But as I said, over that short format, you could be a couple of rounds behind. So if you are a technical boxer, all of a sudden that kind of game plan could go out the window. But they're short format fights and they're meant to be explosive. And that's exactly what we expect next week.
Now let's talk a little bit about next week in Team USA. Who's heading that team? Talk a little bit about some of the fighters, that are going to go across the pond.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, I mean, the concept that's been created, as we mentioned, is amazing, but the staple name that keeps making everyone go really is Roy Jones Jr., yeah? So we're a bit biased. Dennis has been friends with him for years. I've now known Roy a year or so, met him a few times. Really lovely guy, down to earth, humble, considering what he's come from, but arguably the greatest boxer of all time. And the fighters that we have, we don't have elite fighters fighting for us. They're not world champions. They're not European champions yet. They will get there, some of them. We might have 6-0s, 8-0s. They're prospects coming through. So certainly in the UK, they were like, what, Roy Jones is really on the other team, John? And a lot of the Americans that are coming over to London next week, a lot of them just signed up, I think, because they couldn't believe that they'd be rubbing shoulders with Roy. And when we say rubbing shoulders, they might even be sharing like a guest house with him, or certainly he's going to be in their corner and supporting them. So what an experience for the American fighters as well. I just feel sorry for the Americans when they're obviously going to get beat next week.
We shall see is my little saying when people say things like that. We shall see. Now, talk about the celebrities that are going to be at your event. You guys have some big names in the UK. This podcast will be broadcast over there. So talk a little bit to the fans about some of the celebrities that are going to be there.
I probably won't give you the exact names, just so they don't feel pressure on the night or come. But we have got some really big names, some what I would say national treasures. A message Dennis and I received yesterday.
Global.
Yeah,
treasures,
yeah,
one or
like
two of them.
singers, and we mean like super famous. There's some fantastic actors, actresses. There's 2 singers. One of our fighters is a personal trainer, and he trains some famous singers in the UK. They've bought tickets and they're coming along to support him. So the concept is very different from a normal boxing show, and that raises some eyebrows and makes people look a bit differently. Then when you get a bit of glamour that goes with it, that we've picked the venue of Chelsea. I don't know how much you know, Mario, about London itself, but we've got sort of like northeast, southwest, like you'd have anywhere. But
Gotcha.
a lot of our boxing is done in East London, which is historically where boxing's always been. Bit more rough and ready in the east side. They won't mind me saying that. I'm always there. But Chelsea's in the west side of London, and they don't really have... it's quite affluent, the west side. They don't really have boxing very often, certainly not at this level. And to do it at Chelsea is a big dream. And the fighters, certainly the English fighters, they're what we're fighting at Chelsea Football Club. And even some of you Americans, you call it soccer and you don't really follow it, but they still know that Chelsea is Chelsea. Back home, we don't have a lot of people who watch basketball, but they certainly know the Lakers are. So I think it's the same kind of concept. We've done well there.
One of our team captain is Spencer Oliver, who's a massive personality in the UK, and he's one of the main pundits on TALKSPORT. Now he's friends with a lot of personalities and celebs, and one of his big friends is Derek Chisora, who happens to be as close as you can be with a politician called Nigel Farage, who, on our side of the pond, is pals with the main guy on this side of the pond, who happens to be, it's going to be beautiful, Mr. Donald Trump.
Nice.
So how good would that be, Nigel facing off against Donald, and or us getting a bit of a PR.
Hey, you never know. We can get
You never
political and get the president behind this thing where there's a lot of pride, right? He might jump in and just say, hey, man, I like this. We just don't know.
You don't know, but the concept, and there's a bit of, you know, like boxing, if you go back in history, and you're an historian, Mario, the greatest entertainer, fighter, whatever, however you want to describe him, Muhammad Ali, one of his traits where he transformed the sport because he brought theatre. And I don't know if you know the story that he went to watch some wrestling one day, and there were a wrestler there called Gorgeous George, and he were prancing around the ring, a bit like John does when I come over to Sarasota and his back garden. I'm the greatest, I'm the best. And Muhammad Ali says, I'll have a little bit of that. So what I'm saying is, while everybody, can I say what I want on here?
Yeah, you say whatever you
While
want.
people are prostituting themselves out in Saudi Arabia, we're keeping boxing real. And this is where, like we said, and like John said, there's going to be the odd diamond thrown up here within these tournaments. And we're still keeping boxing real. We're looking to do stuff in London. We've been to Texas first to do the first one. London, historic capital, but boxing capital of the world, maybe. Las Vegas, well, hopefully that's our next stop, and that's why we're here to see you and the guys to make that happen. So we're not stopping. This is not just a one-off, Mario. This has got legs, and the more we get, such as yourself, Dawn, John, all pulling together, this is just going to grow and grow.
Yes, this is a global series. I could see just massive epic battles between continents, where all the fans from that country are rallying behind that team and so forth. Now, you mentioned TalkSport. Talk a little bit about where the fans can see these fights.
TalkSport is a global brand. It's known to be the biggest sports radio station in the world, and it's growing and growing. I mean, they'll get millions watching them commentate on a fight, not actually watching the fight. So we've signed up with them. We've got a partnership with TalkSport. So we're not just bringing our own streaming platform of FIGHTZONE. We've hooked up with TalkSport, so that's a game changer for us. So we can go anywhere in the world, and wherever you go in the world, people tune into TalkSport because obviously soccer, the biggest sport in the world, spectator sport in the world, but the next biggest sport for TalkSport is boxing. And
That's
their
beautiful.
numbers are growing, and to team up with us, and they love the concept what we've come up with. So we've got so many positives, but it's like anything, Mario. If you sit on your backside, then it's not going to happen. It's not going to grow. We've got to keep grafting at this. You know what grafting means over here?
Yeah,
It means working hard.
Yeah.
And we've got to look. I have got the best team that I'm involved with, including John. Even when I was here doing Ricky Hatton and some big events, I didn't have the team round me that I have got now. So we are more capable than ever of delivering something that's got sustainability, and we're going to build a legacy here because this can go on for years after we're not here.
Now, we are in the Mecca of boxing in the United States, Las Vegas, Nevada. What would it mean? I mean, we're trying to work this show coming up in September, October-ish. What would it mean to bring this event to Las Vegas?
Yeah, I like to answer that one. You know, when you're growing up, kids want to be boxers or they want to be footballers. I always wanted to be a promoter, and I started about 4 years ago. And I remember some of my kids, a couple of the younger ones, I've got a few kids, but they were like, Dad, you're going to do a show one day at a football stadium, or you're going to do the O2, or you're going to go to Vegas. And I was like, to come to Vegas, it is, for me, the pinnacle of boxing. You know, I grew up watching, you know, he talked about Ricky Hatton and those kind of fights when we'd bring over 10,000 Brits and take over the strip. I think we drank you out of all the beer that you had. You ran out in Vegas, which is mad. But many a fights I could mention that have been over here in the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. That would be, for me personally, to be in a show involved with Dennis on that would be wow. And I know I put a little post up on my Instagram earlier just saying I was in Vegas, you know, with a few of them eyes as if to say, what am I doing there? And I'm now getting, all of a sudden, I've got a lot of friends that I don't normally have, right? I'm getting a load of DMs coming through saying, John, get me there. I want to come. A load of likes that I wouldn't normally get. Because people want to come to Vegas, Mario, they do. And that's why we've come here. So we've only come over for 3 days. Dennis's wife and my wife are a bit like you two are taking the mickey. You just want to jolly. and have a few beers. We had one or two last night, but genuinely we're here to get this show up and running.
So it's fair to say those fighters, all those young prospects from the UK, they want to come to Vegas.
Of course.
And I would say it's the same way for these fighters here. Of course they want to go across the pond to England, travel the world. Some of these guys never been out of their own city. So for them to have the opportunity to go fight in England, that's once in a lifetime. They may never get that opportunity again. Hence, this series going on and on and on, right? These fighters that are going to fight on this series are going to be able to travel the world with doing what they love, which is boxing.
You're right. It's when we've actually got Dennis has a matchmaker called Daniel. He's matched all the Americans with the English. I tend to have a lot of the English home fighters, but when we've reached out to the Americans, spot on. Some of them haven't been out of their region, they haven't been out of their city or state maybe, and now they're going to a totally different continent. It's similar for back home. You know, some of the lads that will have fight for us will never have been to America. I'm sure they would get to go at some stage, but what great opportunity to go to America and fight in Vegas. We just looked at a site visit with yourself at one of the hotels. We're going to look at a couple more. But, you know, when we were speaking to the manager of the entertainments, and they're like, yeah, you'd have all your fight posters out on the strip. And, you know, again, one of those things as a kid, I used to sit there thinking, can you imagine? And you can tell by looking at me, I was never going to be a boxer, but I used to think, God, could I have my name down the side of one of them hotels? These lads back home, and equally for the Americans coming over to Chelsea, to have it associated with Chelsea is really, really good. And Dennis is doing that. He's got his partner Steve Crump, the two of those, Fight Zone.
Played a massive part in helping me and now John. But John's a massive asset to us. Like I said, we've got a great team, and he's bought into this concept. It's not just for the love of boxing. It's the concept as well. We love boxing. And how can we create something? Even during COVID, for example, I did the first ever driving show because you couldn't socialise. Then we did the car park shows. So we are creative. We're not just asking people for lumps of money and then we'll put the biggest fights on, like you know what's happening in Saudi Arabia. We have to be creative, and like I said, we're part of the pyramid. And within this pyramid, there's going to be one or two superstars. Gets kicked up and they will benefit. Kids will be a better fighter for fighting in a tournament like this. You guarantee, you know, like you say, when does a fighter become a good fighter? A fighter becomes a better fighter overnight when he's a champion. And that's the same with this. There will be better fighters out there because they've experienced this concept. It's something completely different. John's just touched on it when he talked about RVR. It were a different pressure. So kids, as you know, Mario, it's about. Did he say it's about 80% up here?
Yes, sir.
When they get in the ring. So the more mentally strong these kids are and they get less fazed by situations, the more chance they've got of getting the best out of themselves. And through tournaments like this, like I say, we will find one or two superstars, not them what's already Olympians and it's just going and they're already supposed to be a world champion. We'll be getting kids who aren't supposed to be world champions, who we end up taking all the way. And I've done it without tournaments like this. And I do believe, apart from the tournaments, we'll be investing into one or two of these kids and taking them all the way where they're fighting in Vegas maybe for a WBC, IBF or WBA world title.
And that takes me to my next question. These 5-round bouts, will some of them be sanctioned at WBC Youth or IBF, Intercontinental, you know, some type of a sanctioning body? Will some of them have that on the line?
Yeah, we had one. We actually had a full WBF world title. It wasn't a 5-rounder. It had to be a 12-rounder. Fantastic opportunity. The fight fell through. It's a bit political, like it usually is. But we have an opportunity to have a fight sanctioned. So Dennis and I probably got to pick up over the next day or two as to which fight we do that on. That may need to be an extended from 5 rounds because for these international fights, they're longer format, as you know.
Right.
But I'd like to think that once Dennis makes a decision, if we do on one of those, the nice phone call back home if we're still here or when we get home that says, look, do you want to fight for one of these international titles that they weren't expecting to? It'll be, yeah. But what's fantastic is what we're seeing with the concept is it isn't always about belts.
Right.
No one woke up any time and said, I want to be a boxer but not win any belts. That's why they're in it. But it's fantastic to see sometimes that there doesn't need to be a belt on to take a fantastic 50-50 fight. The loser, sometimes when a fighter gets beat, they think it's the end of the world. You know, Mayweather never got beat. If I get beat, that's not how it works. Usually any fighter that's been beaten will turn around and tell you that they learnt more in that fight than any other anyway. So the guy that loses, as long as he learns, he will move forward. And the guy who wins, clearly, you know, again, a fantastic platform. But they're all willing to just put the records on the line, not for monster purses, not for big titles, for the love of the concept and fighting for their country.
Hey, that's kind of what's missing sometimes, is just fighting for the legacy. And, you know, everybody right now is just fighting for the paycheck. But what about just fighting for the pride of just being the best, right?
That's what they're
doing. We have to kind of never lose sight of that.
Can I just say, though, Mario, you know, leading on from what John said again, is, yeah, we've got a great relationship with this up-and-coming organisation, the WBF. But we've got great relationships with all the bigger organisations. So I've got to tell you, I've been in this game 30-odd years, and I'm as good as anybody in manoeuvring kids to get into world title shots. So we can do that with any of these kids. And having somebody at the side of me like John, and my partner as well, Steve Crump, he's witnessed it, where we've got kids opportunities to fight for world titles and things like that. So we have got a platform here. We come almost covering all boxes, but we don't want to be just staying in the UK. We want to develop fighters and maybe team up with yourselves, taking kids, American kids or Mexican kids, all the way to world title, not just British kids. So we're an open book. We're here for the journey, and we've got, because I've known you a long time, known John a long time. I want to, me and John especially, because I've had world champions. I've never had a world champ with John. I've had a girl world champ with Steve Crump, but I want to keep doing a few firsts. While ever I've got a passion for this game, we will keep achieving, and we will keep delivering champions.
Now, like the Ryder Cup, there is a trophy hoisted after the battle. Do we have something like that for this tournament? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, my partner Steve Crump, his wife's a jeweler, and she does all sorts of different designs. And I must say, the design we came up with, it's a special trophy, and apparently it's hand-painted by the same people who do F1. So we've not just gone to a trophy shop and picked the first thing that comes to light, or the first thing we put his eyes on. It would developed over a few weeks and a few months, and it's an iconic looking trophy. It's like I say, it's not something that's just a run of the mill. So when whoever wins the trophy lifts it, it will be using our soccer sort of angle. It'll be like lifting the FA Cup. It will mean so much, because these kids who win that trophy, that can be with them for their life. The memory of doing that, whether they never do another thing in boxing or win another thing in boxing, they've achieved something, and they've been part of a winning team. And it's like representing your country in the Olympics. There's special moments, and you go down in history as representing your country, and that's what these kids are doing.
We also have, memorabilia as well. So from this one, we've got UK USA shorts, the gloves as well.
So
and when we were in Texas, the gloves that all the UK lads had, they had like UK gloves. And just watching them, when we gave it to them, it was like, oh my God, I'm fighting for the UK, but I get to keep that. And you're right, they are stories. You know, these young lads that right now, they're probably not thinking about grandchildren, but when we all get older and we have grandchildren, you know, 30, 40 years down the line, they'll be sat there going, that was me in Vegas, in Texas.
You're going to have grandkids in 30 or 40 years' time. Great.
Maybe grandkids. Maybe great-grandkids for me. I'll be happy if I'm still alive in 30 or 40 years, to be fair.
I will be.
So when the United States wins 10 in a row, and we're hosting the trophy here in the States, and then you guys maybe win it after the 10th one, what are you going to do with that trophy?
Is he rambling? 10-0. 10-0. Do you know who's the top of the tree in boxing at the moment in the world?
Was it Usyk, maybe?
No. What country? Overall, we've had the best heavyweight champions. We've still got one heavyweight champion. Yeah, Usyk. But the States have always had the big names, marquee names in boxing, and I grew up with them. But we've knocked you off the perch a little bit. So we're above the States as regards being the elite, having all the best fighters in the world. For such a small country, we're the top of the tree.
Hey.
So it's up to you guys to knock us off our perch again.
Well, fair enough. So now, in closing, any last words you want to say to the UK fans, to the American fans that are going to be watching on TalkSport?
Yeah, I'd say definitely tune in next Friday. You know, if you're over in America, you're going to want to watch your team get beat, maybe not get beat. So make sure you tune in to TalkSport and Fight Zone. It's totally free as well. You know, there are stations out there that you have to pay every month for. People have to work hard and it costs a lot of money, so you haven't got to pay for it. That's really good. Clearly, if you're over in the UK, get yourself a ticket if there is any left. But if you're not, the same thing, watch it. But it will be, I promise you, from the matching, when you go on Box Rec and you look at all them fights, it's flip a coin, let's see what happens. So we're confident the show will be great. Just don't miss out.
Yeah, I think it's a very evenly matched tournament. Like John says, the TalkSport and the team up with TalkSport and FIGHTZONE is fantastic for us. Like he said, everybody around the world can watch this free. You know, instead of all these pay-per-view concepts, this is for free. We're going after the numbers, and where our numbers are growing, and especially now we've teamed up with TalkSport, so people can see proper competitive boxing. You know, one of the biggest sports in the world for free, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger, and we're so pleased to be part of it.
Where can fans go online to read about it, get the information, times when the fights go live? What platform, what website do they go to get this information?
We've got fightzone.uk.
FIGHTZONE.uk.
That's probably our biggest platform that you can tune into,
Okay.
or go on the net for. And TalkSport, which is, like I say, is TalkSport Radio. They'll be plugging it a lot this week. There'll be a lot of mileage this week. We're doing a big face-off on Wednesday where you'll be looking over the River Thames, the iconic St Paul's Cathedral, and a massive view of London. So these kids from the States as well as the US, from the UK, some of the kids who from the UK have never been to TalkSport Studios or been on a platform there overlooking the States. The backdrop will be amazing. You Americans will love it, and it's something that we can do on a regular basis. So next time on the next one of the next legs that we do in London, we want you guys who's all here to be there and part of it, because it's just going to swell and it's going to grow bigger and bigger by the year.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful, beautiful series. It's just the beginning. And there you have it, folks, right here from the Boxing VIP Media Center in Las Vegas. We're out.
It's going to be.